Hello everyone and welcome to our online Parent Council meeting. I'm Sarah Scott, I'm the Chair of James Gillespie's High School Parent Council. Thank you for joining us for our first Parent Council meeting for 2022. To start, can I make the usual apologies for any technical issues we might be having during the meeting? For example, if you have problems joining us or problems hearing us, or if one of the presenters' Wi-Fi freezes, we ask for your patience. As usual, we're using Microsoft Teams for the meeting because it is a system approved by Edinburgh Council, but it is not as interactive as some other systems, and the only people who can be heard are the presenters. Everyone else attending can write questions via the Q&A panel, but they can't be heard. The meeting is being recorded and it will be put online for those who can't make it this evening, and also for those who may have to leave at any point or might want to rewatch it later. So that being the case, please don't share any personal information that shouldn't be aired publicly. We normally aim for meetings to last about an hour, though we sometimes overrun that a little. As I mentioned, we can only take questions via the Q&A panel. The questions will be published for everyone to see by our parent moderator this evening. So if you would like your question to say private, please say so when you type it in. And if you see a question on the Q&A that is similar to one that you would like to ask, could you like that question rather than ask a repeat? That will be very helpful in making sure that we can manage the questions as efficiently as possible. Finally, can I also ask that all questions and comments are expressed in an appropriately courteous way? All the questions will be gathered up at the end and posted together with answers on the Parent Council website. We will try to handle this as quickly as possible, but if there are a lot of questions, it can take time for the school to get written answers for them all. So if you have any urgent issues or queries, please don't wait, but get in touch directly with the school or with the Parent Council. So tonight in the first part of the meeting, I will give an update on Parent Council activities, and that will be followed by our head teacher, Donald McDonald's usual report, an update on what is happening at the school at the moment. So that will be the two main items, and then we will have the Q&A. So starting with the Parent Council work, firstly, can I just make a quick advert for our next Parent Council meeting, which will be on Tuesday the 22nd of March. We'll include a subject talk on the maths curriculum at Gillespie's. I think it will be good to get back to what might be termed more normal Parent Council business, as meetings over nearly the whole 2 last years have been very often had to deal with crisis management and changes in normal practice and sudden announcements and general disruption caused by COVID. And in the pre-COVID past, we have seen that hearing from staff to give an overview on how their area of teaching operates in practice at the school is really useful for parents and for pupils. And we hope to be able to feature more of that type of presentation in the future again. And also that it will be even more useful now as we're able to record and disseminate talks to people to let them catch up with them later and to refer to them when questions arise. So that's the end of this advert. Moving on to other issues. In the autumn last year, we and the other parent councils raised with the council the issue of the effect of long-lasting COVID restrictions on parental engagement with schools, as parents have not been able to go into school buildings and to participate in normal school activities such as school concerts and in-person parents' evenings and orientation visits for new S1 parents and things like that. So we asked the council to consider how this situation might be improved, and to consider also what the long-term effects of these changes might be and what should be done to mitigate those effects as we close in on the end of our second year affected by the pandemic. So in response, the council set up a number of open meetings with parents to look at the impacts of COVID on the operation of schools generally, including parental engagement as one of the areas of impact. So details of the meetings were circulated to parents at the beginning of January, and we have just received feedback from the council on the very first of those meetings with a summary of the kinds of issues that were raised. We will get this information posted on the PC website so you can all have a look, but we can see that although some positives are listed, such as it being easier to participate with online parents' evenings and the rollout of technology, there is unsurprisingly a longer list on the negative side, including specific points about the inequality of the impact of COVID on families and the effect of the lack of school events and parents not being in schools, patchy communication, problems with access to technology and things like that. The last in this series of meetings will be on Tuesday the 22nd of February, and we encourage parents to attend to let the council know about your views and experience. The link for the meeting has previously been circulated, but we will do that again, and if you have problems finding it, please let us know and we will send it on to you. This has been a period of enormous upheaval. I think I say that every parent council at the moment, But it really is important that the council has as complete a view as possible of the effects that that has had on families and children. Turning now to events, keen Parent Council watchers will know that we have been looking to re-establish our events and fundraising group after this period of disruption. I am happy to say that we have had a group of people come forward to say they would be interested in taking part, and we have set up a meeting to take place on the evening of Thursday the 10th of February, which will be online. If you think you might be interested in this area of work at all but haven't come forward yet, please do let us know and we will get you connected into the meeting. It does look at the moment that we might hope for a resumption of more in-person events in the not too distant future, and it would be great to have people involved in that. The more the better, really. Next, a quick update on active schools, which we have been reporting on regularly over the last year and a half. Those at the PC meeting at the end of November will have heard from Elliot Ambrose, our Active Schools Coordinator, who reported on the Gillespie's Active Schools programme, which got up and running again in September, and updated us on the availability of volunteers and how the new donation system is going. To this for all, and this is due to changes in policy handed down to us from Sports Scotland. And although participation is free, money still has to be made available to cover running costs of the clubs offered, including for coaches in some sports. As we heard at that meeting in November, the level of donations at the school was very good in the first term, but will need to be maintained in this term and the next. And also Elliot is keen to recruit more parent volunteers to help run clubs. And if you'd be interested in that at all, please get in contact with him. And via us if you don't have his address. Parents led by Lisa Sutherland, one of our own PC members, have also been raising with the council for very many months now the problems caused by the implementation of the new system and the effect it is having on the availability of activities for children. A report was put together for the council's Education, Children and Families Committee in November about how well or otherwise active schools and other clubs had been re-established in the school year 2021-22. And the evidence was that we at Gillespie are very much the outliers, both in having an extensive active schools programme set up from September and, in our case, one that is larger than it was pre-COVID. For many other schools, the programme is very much reduced and, in some cases, hadn't been established at all. The Education Committee is continuing to follow this up, and parents' complaints have also led to meetings being set up directly with Amanda Hatton, who is the new Director of Education and Children's Services at the Council, with Parent Council representatives from across Edinburgh, and a working group is to be established to look at how to make things work now and in the future. So even for us at Gillespie's, this is a trial this year to see how well we can get the new funding system to work, and to see whether this is going to be a long-term and robust model. What we have in the school this year is functioning well so far, but it is relying on donations, and this needs to be a reliable source of funding if we're to keep going down this path. So that is why these discussions are also of interest to us. But it also means that, you know, if you are interested in volunteering, please do get in touch with Elliot. He will really appreciate that support to the Active Schools programme. And if you're able to make a donation to help maintain our Active Schools programme, please do so via Parent Pay. And also on the subject of the council's engagement with parents, the council has set up a new group to liaise between parents and parent councils on the one hand and council officers on the other. We already have 4 locality groups for parent councils in the North East, South East, North West and South West of Edinburgh, as well as a citywide group for special schools. And the council is adding to that a new group for parents of children with additional support needs in mainstream schools, and have asked PCs to nominate representatives. I'm pleased to say that Laura Bird, one of our PC members, will be taking on that role for us. So if you are the parent of a child covered by this new group and you want any issues raised with the council or further information on the group, please get in touch with the parent council so we can take that forward. And we will report back on the meetings with the council as they happen. We have found that the locality groups we are already part of, well, the one that we're part of is really a good way for information to be disseminated by the council to parents and for parents to bring issues up with them. And also an opportunity to hear about the experiences in other schools and to make common cause with other school representatives. So we hope that this will also be the case for this new group. Just quickly on the Gaelic Medium Education consultation. I think Donald's going to speak about this a little bit later. There was a special meeting of the Council's Education Committee to consider the best way of going forward to a statutory consultation on the creation of a new GME secondary on Monday this week. And a link for the papers for that meeting were circulated in the Friday email last week. At the meeting, councillors agreed that consideration of the consultation arrangements would be continued until the date of the next Education Committee meeting on 1st of March, and that is to allow for further discussions and to allow council officers to provide additional information on the sites under consideration. So the Parent Council and the school will continue to update you on any further developments there. Turning now to Parent Council finances, which we are obliged by our constitution to report on every meeting, and we hope we find it of interest too. On behalf of the Parent Council Treasurer, Ros Ingle, I'd like to let you know the following. So firstly, we're pleased to report that Ros has been joined by Parent Council members Vicky Plant and Penny Tarsia, who have volunteered to assist with the financial administration of the Parent Council. So thank you to Vicky and Penny. Next, the second of the quarterly easy fundraising payments in the school year was £152.61 and was paid on the 4th of November. So easy fundraising is a way to raise money for the school when you are doing shopping online. And if you'd be interested in that, there are details on the Parent Council website. The Parent Council also received our annual grant from Edinburgh Council on 10th November, which this year has been increased to £1,359.40. This is a grant that goes to all parent councils. It's intended to cover running costs, and this school year we're using it to pay WordPress for the domain name for our website, which is £36 for the year, and that payment was made on 19th November, and a monthly subscription to Microsoft for a Teams account to run Parent Council meetings at £7.20 per month. So the council grant far exceeds our actual running costs, so any excess is included in the closing surplus funds for each school year, and it gets paid back to the school in the following school year in the form of small sums grants. On 11th January, the balance of the Parent Council fund in parent pay, which is held by the school, was £2,482.11, which includes £81.63 left over from 2021. So this means that up to that date in this school year, the parent pay appeal has raised £2,400.48, which is great. And that includes money which was raised through the festive fundraising appeal. So thank you to everyone who has donated, whether at school or before. This sustains a really valuable part of our support for school life through the Parent Council Small Sums Fund. And on that subject, the Small Sums Fund application process was run in September 2021 in conjunction with the Gillespie's Trust, who funded some of the bids. After this process, for the first time ever, we had not spent all of the surplus funds from last year and had £1,600 remaining. We are therefore running a second supplementary round of applications, closing on February 11th. We're hoping that the Trust will be involved in this round of applications again and are awaiting confirmation of that. And finally, the balance of the Parent Council bank account, as at the most recent statement of 1st December, was £3,095.16. So I hope that was all of interest. If you do have questions about the finances, I'll do my best to answer them. And if they're too complicated, I'll take them away to Ros and she will be able to answer. That's all from me from the Parent Council at the moment. I would like to pass on to Donald now so that he can give his report. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Can I just double check that you can hear me okay? Yep, I'm getting a thumbs up. Well, good evening, everyone. So just a report from me then, and I'll pick up on a few of the questions that were submitted in advance of this evening, and they arrive with me via Sarah. First of all, in general terms, the school it feels like it's much more normal. We're getting back to normal. The last 2 years have been challenging, but I have to say, I think the response from the whole school community has been magnificent in terms of how people have just got on with it. There have been challenges around the time that we've been through, not least the SQA, which I think has an enormous impact on a school like ours, where we're such a large school and such an academic school. I'm really pleased, and I'll come back to that shortly, in terms of the plans this year are very much it's business as normal, insofar as the assessments will be the final exams, which have been the tradition for, well, for as long as I can remember, bar the last 2 years. First of all, in a general update on COVID then. So our mitigations continue. We have one-way systems. Regular hand washing is encouraged. We have sanitizer stations around the school. And youngsters keeping their distance from adults. But we have example, we zone off the teacher's desk. So there is a 2-metre zone around that. Clearly, though, during lessons, teachers will walk around and so on and so forth and interact with pupils. And clearly that's the need for that appears to be diminishing. Concerned as we were about the potential impact of Omicron, especially the few weeks just before we broke up for Christmas. Talk of it being much more transmissible, and at that stage not knowing what its impact would be and just how much it would impact on people's health. Pleasingly, it hasn't had as much impact generally in society as was initially feared, but nevertheless our various mitigations continue. Face coverings are amongst these, and we have just under 40 youngsters who are medically exempt, and they're encouraged to wear the universally recognised sunflower lanyard, which are available at the school office, and that avoids them being continually challenged by staff for not wearing a face covering. The support of youngsters and staff for the measures we put in place have been magnificent, and we look forward to returning more to normal in terms of not having face coverings and so forth when we get the green light for that. And that's very much a case of just watching the news. There has been a tendency in Scotland perhaps to be a bit more cautious than south of the border. And generally, I would say that's welcomed by staff and the pupils I work with. I think when we introduced the various mitigations, they were introduced gradually. They were introduced, I think, with clear communication, etc. And similarly, as we come out of the mitigations, we have to communicate that clearly so we don't end up with haphazardness occurring and anxiety levels rising unnecessarily. So we have started thinking about how we're going to do that. But we await a green light from the government, and then there'll be council advice to us as head teachers in terms of how we manage that and communicate with parents and our wider communities. We continue to encourage testing, lateral flow testing, and for the sake of creating a routine, which I think is important, would recommend Thursday mornings and Sunday mornings, deliberately in the mornings prior to coming to school, so that anyone who tests positive would remain at home and then follow the guidelines at that time. Positive cases, the numbers we're having in the school community have reduced, in line more so with what we're experiencing in October, November. We're not complacent, though. I think we have to keep an eye on it with our various mitigations and so on and so forth. The milder weather in the past 2 weeks has helped us. When we had a cold spell 2 weeks ago, classrooms were uncomfortable. They were cold. I got complaints, not many, from staff and pupils, also some parents concerned about the classrooms being cold and getting the balance between ventilation and air temperatures. And some teachers got that wrong. The rooms were too cold. I can understand that, where they'd want to err on that side. But the milder weather has helped, and just hoping that the milder weather continues. And teachers, we have active discussions about the level of ventilation that we should have in each room and so forth. We do have carbon dioxide monitors in almost all of the classrooms, and that helps us. Carbon dioxide in the air that we breathe out is an indication perhaps of what COVID levels in that room might be. Essentially, it's a proxy measure, but it guides us as to whether we need to open the windows and do a slightly wider. I've had no complaints really in the last 10 days. It was when we had the cold spell when I got some complaints about the rooms being quite cold, but we get through that. And as I do on a Friday, I'll share the number of positive cases that we have in the school community. That gives you a measure, at least, of just where we're at. When last I saw wider Edinburgh school figures, we were well down that league table. We've not had wider Edinburgh figures shared with us in the last 6 weeks, so I can't comment on the comparison. But generally, I'm pleased with how we're doing on that front, and of course, we'd really want to get it down to zero. Moving on, if I may, the next, I just want to say a few words about the prelims that we currently have at James Gillespie's. They are extended over a 3-week period. Why such a long period? Well, primarily what we try and do is replicate the final set of exams. There are arguments for and against us doing that, but I do firmly believe, based on my experience, that replicating as far as we can the final exams is the best preparation for pupils, and it sets it against lost teaching time. I understand the arguments for that too. Prelims then provide robust evidence for us if, for example, if exams in May, June were to be cancelled. There is always that possibility, and a final decision on that will be delayed till March, understandably, because we don't know what variants might emerge. But with the prelims in hand, we now have a really strong evidence base, which we didn't have last year. So we had to base it on final assessments, or exams as we call them. The prelims also give us evidence in the event of absence during the final exam, underperformance in the final exam, but also we use the prelims, and they are really strong in terms of a formative assessment as an assessment that provides experience, but also a basis, a platform upon which to reflect and learn for all the youngsters involved. One thing I've picked up very strongly is, in my 10 years at Gillespie's, is there tends to be a very notable improvement between prelim time and the final exams. There are various reasons for that, and it's much to do with the school ethos and the culture of high expectation, with really, really strong parental engagement and support. So that it builds strongly. So the prelims are really important. But particularly this year, the prelims for almost all the youngsters, it's the first experience of such a wide set of exams, having exam leave and going home and using that time wisely, etc. That I believe has worked well. We've also targeted, whilst we've released teachers from classes, we have targeted groups of youngsters who need a bit of extra help, who perhaps were on the cusp of achieving National 5 or higher. We've targeted them and brought them in for extra support. And of course, too, this year, we've had invigilators in for the first time, and this has given them a dress rehearsal. It also gave us the opportunity to see whether invigilators would in fact dare cross the threshold, given the context of COVID, etc. And the response has been very strong. We have a full team of invigilators, some days over 30 in the school. So that's been very positive. So we know we're well set up for the final exams to go ahead. In the coming days, staff will be sharing the results with pupils so that they can then have a look at how they got on, etc. We will be meeting with parents 16th of March, but clearly before then we'll need to be sharing the results on the data around all of that with parents as to how pupils performed in the exams. If there's any other questions around prelim, I'll pick it up in the Q&A. Active schools, I was asked us to comment on. Active schools resumed on Monday, 17th of January, and I've heard nothing to the contrary to suggest that it's not up and running and working well. There was a question about whether or not we would have alternative timetable this year. For those who may be new to the school, we ran an alternative timetable. This was a program of activities which you could view as extracurricular or different to the normal curriculum over a 2 or 3 day period, usually during May when the seniors are out on exam leave. Doing it with the whole school in June simply wasn't feasible. So we did it in May most recently. And until this had been raised with me and relayed to me by Sarah, it hadn't been on our agenda for planning. It's something I would want to take back to the senior team and discuss with staff. When we have done this in the past, we've tended to have finalised much of the programme, usually by Christmas, in terms of booking venues and so on and so forth. There is a time issue in doing this, and also in terms of payments and so on and so forth. So let me take that back to staff and have a think about it. I can fully understand the desire, the motivation to get back into extracurricular and offering such activities to pupils, because we haven't had those for 2 years, and we're really, really keen to get back to some kind of normality. Our youngsters, they need them just to have a bit of fun and different experiences as part of their school experience. And also on that note, when formerly we would have an S1 residential where we would take them away, normally that would happen towards the end of March. That's not happening this year. We still haven't got the green light for a variety of these residential trips. That will come, assuming that COVID restrictions will ease. So more to follow on that. Finally, and Sarah will keep me right if there's anything else that I haven't touched upon, GME updates, and generally in Darragh, you'll have received a letter from us to explain to you that initially we'd hoped to be taking over Darragh in May or June this year. As a result of delays in the building programme, you may recall it has been delayed by 1 year because of COVID over the past 2 years. We were hoping to be in situ May and June this year, so we could become familiar with the building and having set up and running, so we could hit the ground running in August. That, I'm informed, isn't possible. We will not have access to the Darragh Annex until the end of July. So it's going to be tight for us to become familiar with the building. So we now are working with colleagues in the council in order to best prepare how we will manage the transition for all pupils who are going to be taught down at Darragh. And that will include youngsters who are involved in Gaelic medium education, or GME as we often abbreviate to, but also some seniors for whom the current accommodation is insufficient. So we envisage having some of our senior pupils down at Darragh also. This particular pinch point with accommodation shouldn't impact upon us in June, because we don't have S1 in June, so we should have sufficient accommodation for the entire school. It does mean that we're going to have to be creative in terms of how we have the P7s visit the school. So we're going to look at how we can do that, but it won't be the traditional 3-day visit with all what will be 1,650 youngsters on the campus. That won't be happening because we simply don't have the capacity, but we'll find another way of doing that. And as Sarah mentioned earlier, there was a council education committee earlier this week to discuss taking forward a statutory consultation on the relocation of Gaelic medium education from James Gillespie's High School. Moving to Darragh over the next 3 years is really a transition towards that. It had been planned that a standalone, autonomous Gaelic secondary school would be ready for 2025. So currently then the council is in continuing discussions, primarily with Gaelic medium parents, but through a statutory consultation, there'll be opportunity for other parents to contribute to that discussion on what the format, the shape, and the transition arrangements towards such a school will be. It's not straightforward. There are many implications to be thought through and discussed, and it's really important that we get that right. And I'm pleased that the council decided to postpone a decision on that, pending further discussion and clarification on key points for our parents. And on that, well done to the deputation who presented at the committee meeting on Monday morning. I thought they were quite excellent, and I did watch and listen carefully as to the very detailed and knowledgeable arguments that they presented. But thanks to the council for listening to the parents and taking their points on board. And it's in that spirit of partnership where we have to go forward to get the very best for not just the GME pupils, but all the pupils at Gillespie's as we approach challenges around accommodation in years to come. all youngsters deserve the best possible education. We can only do that if we have the accommodation, the facilities, the teachers, the resources, etc., to deliver that. That, in effect, Sarah, concludes my report. Is there anything else you'd like me to touch on just now, Sarah, or shall we turn to the questions?
Thank you, Donald. That covered all the issues that you were asked to cover, and some other ones as well. And we have 16 items in the Q&A, so I think we could probably turn to that now, and hopefully we'll be able to make good progress through what we've got. There, would you like to choose yourself what order they're done in, or do you want me to ask you the questions?
Let's interact over them, Sarah. If you choose them, I'll respond, and the ones that I don't have the answer to this evening, then we'll follow up.
Right, can we start with, I think I'll just take it in the order that they appear to me. When are the 5th year parent consultations scheduled for? Presumably this will be before course choices have to be made.
So the date is the 16th of March. And yes, I agree that logically the course choice returns should happen after that date. But let me have a look at that and discuss. We've got a new person in charge of this year, is Deirdre O'Brien. She's taken that over from Jeff Warden. So let me just double check to make sure that we've got a logical sequencing of events, and I'll comment on that in my Friday update.
Okay, I see there was a follow-up to that, which was that's 5th year going into 6th year. So I'm assuming is that the group that you're covering rather than 4th going into 5th year? Yes,
it's the S5, S6 parents that I was referring to, but I'll cover both. We'll put a note out so people are clear on what's happening with both. I shall do that.
Okay, moving on to the next one then. The question is, I understand that children are allowed to use their mobile phones in classes. I really don't think this is a good idea. I hope this could be addressed. Okay,
thanks, Sarah. Use of mobile phones in classes has been a discussion, a debate, I suppose, I've been involved with since mobile phones came in some 20 years ago, and I'm aware of arguments for and against. Our current approach at Gillespie is that mobile phones are allowed to be used, but only with teacher consent. When I do walk around corridors and pop my head around the door, I do very rarely catch people using them without permission. You know they're doing that, they're sneaking or texting underneath the table. But we have very positive use. When youngsters, for example, are in science and they're asked to write up an experiment, they can take a picture, for example, of the apparatus that's there and refer to that later if they wish. And also some youngsters will take pictures of what is on the board. I've seen that used very, very responsibly. It's perhaps a discussion, a debate to need to better understand what people's concerns are around it. There are occasions of misuse. Very rarely, though, do I come across, or does that come to my attention? I would suggest that I see more evidence of misuse of mobile phones in Westminster than I do in James Gillespie's High School. But nevertheless, I think it's a live topic and a debate, and I think it's one I know that has gained press coverage because some schools have banned mobile phones in a blaze of glory and claimed that it's had a positive impact. The jury's out for me on it, but currently it's very much we take an educated use of mobile phones. They're used under teacher direction, as it were, and that's what we currently do. But as more research and arguments appear, then of course any kind of approach that we have is open to scrutiny and changes if it's for the benefit of all.
Could I just ask as a follow-up to that, Donald, do you think that this will be likely to change in the light of the rollout of devices? You know, if all the kids have iPads, will they need phones for research and taking photographs of, you know, equipment and things like that? Will that be one of the things that will be taken into account in discussions?
Yeah, I would agree. I think when we have iPads issued to each pupil, then it would make the use of mobile phones redundant. I wouldn't see there a need at all. The various apps that they would need would be on their iPad. But as they are rolled out and introduced into the school, then my initial reaction is that there would be no need for mobile phones to be out at all.
Thanks, Donald. Moving on to the next one. The question is about whether there has been an update from the council about when school musical performances will be allowed to resume. And I think there's one a little bit further down asking about visits to the school, whether when they'll be allowed to resume. If you know anything about when COVID restrictions are likely to change to allow basically parents in the school and live performances.
Yeah, at the moment, I've heard nothing to confirm that the current position is changing with parents coming into the school. We're currently operating on the basis of there being no more than 50 in our room, the exception being prelims, where we got special dispensation for that. But currently there is no dispensation around having public performances where we could invite parents in. Fingers crossed that day will arrive soon.
Thanks, Donald. I would add to that as well that this is one of the issues that parent councils bring up every time they speak to the council in the regular locality meetings. Well, because these rules are set at a council level, and it's obviously of concern across parent councils, and that's one of the things that encourage the council to set up its open meetings to cover things like the parental engagement and how that is affected. But we haven't had any indication that things are likely to change there either. So I would second that particular position. Moving on to the next question. I just wanted reassurance that when COVID allows, parent-teacher meetings will be in person again. I understand that they have had to be online for now, but they haven't really, aren't really good enough like this. Followed up by somebody else saying, I prefer the option of doing parent consultations online as well as in person. For longer than 5 minutes though, the in-person version can be very frantic and stressful for parents and teachers. So they've got two different views there about how parent consultations might take place in the future. Do you have any views?
Yeah, my view on that is I think that this is one that the Parent Council could help us with. I think in advance of us publishing a programme of these evening meetings for next session, that we should survey parents and get a feel for what the views are out there. I think it would be important to do that. We may end up going for one approach through the year. It may be a mixed approach if we set out such a survey cleverly so that it is set in such a way that we can identify which year groups and who's responding. We may well go with a majority position, but I think that's one that perhaps could be taken forward working with you as a parent council and arranging a survey as a means of gauging wider opinion across the school community. As staff, my feeling is I think that we'd be happy with either. But really very, very much open to being guided on that because it's a service we provide for parents.
Thanks for that, Donald. We'd certainly be very happy in the Parent Council to engage with you on that. Next question. What measures can be taken to ensure that students are let out on time for lunch? There have been occasions when my child has missed lunch and enjoys the full break, I think it is.
What I will do, I can send out a reminder to staff to observe the times. The current arrangement is that we allow our S1s out a bit earlier. Lunchtime typically is 1 o'clock. S1s are allowed out about 10 to 1. We sometimes relax that if they're doing a practical subject and they want to fulfill whatever experiment or they're doing cooking, then those S1s on that day won't get out until nearer 1. But we allow S1s out early. The other youngsters should be allowed out at 1. It may be a little bit staggered around that, which fortuitously helps in terms of not having crowding in corridors. But beyond a minute or two after 1, that shouldn't be happening because youngsters, that's as the staff do, they deserve and they need a break. They need to go out and get the fresh air. If there's a specific recurring issue with a class or a pupil, please just drop me an email in confidence and I'll follow that up.
Thanks. So back to parents' evenings again. I was unable to secure any slots to speak to a teacher for my S2 choosing subjects this year. All slots were gone within 1 hour. This first come first served approach does not support equality of access for families. The alternative being offered is a written dialogue coordinated through Pupils support, not quite the two-way dialogue I'm seeking given the concerns I'd like to discuss. I believe change is coming, but in the meantime, is the school considering any interim arrangements?
I can confirm, yes, I share that concern. I think that all parents should have the opportunity to speak with their teacher. I contacted our union reps earlier this week, actually, following an email I received from a parent to express frustration that we must find a way of better doing this and opening up more appointments for next session. It's an area that hasn't worked well for us. It has been there for as long as I can remember. It's not a feature necessarily of an online appointment system. The number of slots available currently through the online system actually is the same as it was when we had face-to-face, and we had pinch points then. But I think we have to find better ways of addressing this and meeting needs. What I've also done is contacted other schools to find out how they have mitigated against this and what they're doing. So what I'd want to do is to bring about change for next year, so this doesn't happen. In the meantime, bear with us, and if there are particular youngsters for whom you would like some feedback, then what you do is you contact the Pupils support leader. I know that's not ideal if you've not had the opportunity to meet with your youngster's teacher, but so I apologise for that. But I do want to find a way of resolving this so we can have more appointments and more parents meeting with teachers.
Yeah, thanks for that, Donald. I know this is an issue that comes quite a lot at parent council meetings. It was also raised separately with the parent council, so certainly something I think in everybody's interest to try and sort out. Next question, how likely is it that P7 transition will take place in school rather than online this year?
Highly likely. Given the situation with Edinburgh, that we don't have adequate accommodation, I would see us doing something creative. So the current thinking, and this is still developing, is that we would probably invite P7s up, perhaps in school groups, smaller groups, whilst the school is in operation, to give them a flavour of what it's like to be in the high school. It will be a shortened version of a transition experience, and that primarily is down to us not having the full accommodation available. But we would want to have all the P7s up on the campus, barring changes to COVID and restrictions if there are further variants that come our way. I would add to that each year we do have an enhanced transition group. These are youngsters who, through recommendation from their P7 teachers, have heightened levels of anxiety about transition. We have between 20 and 30 youngsters who come up in the 6 weeks or so through May and June, and they will visit us weekly as part of their enhanced transition. Their actually visiting the campus will continue as normal. I think the question was more about the other 280 youngsters. We're expecting around 300 youngsters to join us in August, so we're actively seeking a way of doing that, and it's on the agenda when I meet with primary school head teachers, all 6 of them, next week, next Tuesday morning.
Thank you. And on the subject of accommodation, the next question is, are there going to be contingency arrangements in case the Darragh refurbishment continues to be delayed? So I assume that means beyond the start of next session.
The contingency I anticipate would be that we will use Children First, and that would be an interim arrangement whilst Darragh is being finished. I don't have a definitive answer. That's my thinking. I was having discussion around that with Laura Stewart, who's our deputy teacher leading on our transition to Darragh. I think it's one that we'd want to reflect further on, and also just seek clarification and assurance really from the colleagues at the council who are managing the refurbishment project, that we have got a clear workable plan in place. And I fully understand why parents would want to have that in place. So it's on our radar, and it's something that we're mindful of.
Next question is in relation to classrooms being cold and bad weather. Is it possible for pupils in such circumstances to put up their hoods? I have been informed that it's against the rules, and I'm not sure why.
I would be honest and say I'm not sure why either. It does seem a little bit strange to not be putting up hoods. It's probably a throwback to days gone by when normally we ask youngsters to remove outdoor coats, headwear, etc. And it may well also be we've had evidence of TikTok challenges impacting on our school. Parents may or may not be aware that one of the TikTok challenges currently doing the rounds is that pupils go into a different class and tell the teacher they've been moved there without telling. It's a bit of a challenge, and someone then records that and puts it onto TikTok as their challenge. There has been in Edinburgh schools some incidents of youngsters coming from other schools and doing that. It's a bit of fun, mainly harmless. That may explain it, but I can't think of a rational reason why they couldn't have their hoods up if it was a little bit cold, if they wanted to be a bit warmer. So I can take that back. Or once again, if it was a specific instance or a youngster where anxiety, discomfort was an issue, please contact me privately, and I can deal with that confidentially as well.
Thank you. Now I have a question and a comment about the alternative timetable and the S1 camp. It would be nice to have the alternative timetable at least for the S3s this year, as they missed it in S1 and S2, and so this would be their last chance. And they also missed their S1 camp. Obviously, I understand there are lots of challenges in putting the programme together, though.
Yeah, thanks. Doing a programme with the S3 in isolation, for example, wouldn't work because those teachers they're also required to teach S1, S2. So it would then change what we'd be doing for S1, S2. So my immediate thoughts is that if we were to do an alternative timetable, it really would have to encompass S1, 2 and 3 for the simple reason that we wouldn't have then teachers for S1, S2. It would have to operate for all. I think it would be tricky to put such a programme in place, but I really want to take it back to staff and just get a reaction in terms of who might be prepared to take that on and take it through to fruition before we commit to it.
Yeah, certainly it's a very well liked part of the school year when it does take place, and it's quite a shock to realise that somebody leaving S3 this year missed their S1 camp because of the beginning of the pandemic. That's 3 years of effect and 3 different. It's quite a thing. A simpler question: when do the course choices have to be in for those going into S6? So that was the question you answered before, I think, about the parent consultations for S5 going into S6.
Yeah, I'll come back to you on that. We have introduced new systems, an online system this year of gathering course choices, and then it is automated also at our end in terms of feeding into a system which allows us to generate a timetable. I'll take that point up and give dates, etc., in my Friday update so that parents know exactly what the deadlines are, and also the consultation opportunities with teachers ahead of submitting course choice forms.
Thanks. So the next question is, or comment is, I would like to see an opportunity for children to have self-defence classes, especially girls.
Yeah, I'm aware that we do have some self-defence classes. For example, well, is kickboxing, is that a self-defence or is it an offensive sport? I'm not sure. That's one that we can feed back to Elliot, our active schools coordinator, to see whether or not there might be scope or whether there will be a coach that we could employ to develop that. So that's one I'm happy to take back to Elliot. It's not one I don't believe that we currently offer as part of the P curriculum, but I can run it past Mr. Newell also to see if there might be some interest in that.
Thank you. On the S6 leavers, have we any news dates for events for this year's S6s who are leaving?
we inquired about provisional dates with various venues. We hadn't confirmed it at that stage. I'm thinking back when I was talking to colleagues about this about several weeks ago. Nothing confirmed as yet, other than there would be a strong intention to have a Leavers event akin to what we've run in the past, and that may well involve, for example, an event where we would meet with parents. We needed to use a large venue, which was the Greyfriars Kirk, Greyfriars Bobby. That we used that. We met with parents, and it was a champagne reception. Thereafter, youngsters went off on coaches to a local hotel for their leavers due, and we had opportunity then for parents to meet. We had an event at the City Chamber. So I'm hoping that something along those lines could take place, but much will depend on restrictions easing and us being allowed to do that as we move towards the end of June. The normal date would be in the last fortnight of June. So it's watch the space. We can't confirm anything at the moment because it is so fluid, given the concerns around COVID restrictions and how they'll be eased. But I'm positive that such events will go ahead.
A question now about when junior pupils are to get their iPads. I know that came up at the last Parent Council meeting, and the dates have slid a bit or slipped a bit to later on this year.
Yeah, the date for the remaining pupils to get their iPads are towards the end of August, beginning of September. That's what's planned. The update today that in the slippage around this, it's a world supply problem around IT in general. And I suppose, without going into the world of geopolitics, it would appear that some key components are sourced from one or two of the larger countries, and that in turn is having an impact on supply chains and what we can deliver here in Edinburgh. August, September is the date I've been given, and here's hoping that we're good to go at that stage.
And the next one is, are the S6 photos ready for collection yet?
I don't know. I probably would know, because I'd be sending a note out to parents to let you know that they're ready. Let me follow up on that one and share with parents as soon as they are ready, for probably not being uplifted, more likely being ordered online, but we'll send information out around that.
Is Deirdre O'Brien or somebody else the best person for an S5 to contact about the number of subjects she might wish to study in S6, which will have a bearing on university applications, because she may need 3 advanced hires if wishing to study down south. And my daughter's PSL is leaving shortly, and she needs advice about what can be fitted into the S6 schedule and what is feasible, and she's unsure who to speak to once she's back in school after the prelim leave. So who would be the best person to contact for that?
What to do is, if there's any parent is uncertain about who to contact about any matter, please address it to me, and I'll make sure it's shared with the correct person. In the context, we have got a member of staff leaving. That's Leanne McQuaid. She's going off for a 2-year secondment, so Mrs. Garrett will be taking up that position. But if there's any doubt at all, please just send it for my attention. In terms of advanced hires, youngsters who are going down south, they are encouraged to do a minimum of 3. In the past, we've had youngsters doing 4 advanced hires. And I can think 2 or 3 years ago of one youngster who did 4 advanced hires and a hire. It is possible in the S6 to do 5 subjects. But I think that, yeah, please contact me, and if there's a specific question, I'll make sure that it goes to the right person so you get up-to-date advice. I'd also recommend contacting our careers officer, who is far more up-to-date. I'm always reluctant to offer any information about a particular university because it changes. And in addition to contacting the school, if there's a particular university in mind, please contact the admissions section of the faculty of the university of choice. They will have the up-to-date information. It's really important that we get this right so that we don't make choices which then subsequently turn out to have been the wrong ones, which could impact on youngsters' attractiveness to that particular university. So getting the updated information is key.
Now, another question here is, can we have regular curriculum evenings and parent consultations for all, and clear guidance on how we can contact teachers where their child has concerns? So it covers a couple of areas.
Yes, first of all, in terms of where there are concerns, what we'd request that you do is you contact your child's pupil support leader. They are the contact. They are given time in their working week to arrange for that to happen. They will gather whatever information is required. They will contact however many teachers need to be contacted. There was a second part to that question, Sarah.
So one was about curriculum evenings and parent consultations for all. Another was about contacting teachers. Okay.
In terms of the curriculum evenings, as you mentioned earlier, we want to get back to doing curriculum evenings. And if the format is as we did formerly with Parent Council, where at each Parent Council meeting we would invite a head of a faculty along and talk about the curriculum, pedagogy, etc. in that department, and they give an opportunity to share with parents. For example, at the meeting in March, we will have the head of maths along, and we'll talk about how we structure maths at James Gillespie, and whether we do setting, broadbanding, and all of that, and we'll give a flavour of how we deliver maths and what our rationale is. And that's changed in recent years. It's changed quite a lot in the 10 years I've been at Gillespie.
Thank you, Donald. Now, I think this is our final question. If that is correct, then that might be the first time we have ever finished on time and done all the questions. And it's an opposite one, given what we've just been talking about. Are S2 to be streamed for maths and English this term for their NAT 4-5 arrangements?
So just repeat the question for me.
Are S2 to be streamed for maths and English going into NAT 5, 4 and 5?
The term streaming. Streaming is, in a Scottish context, a fairly archaic term. It was one that I experienced when I was in school. Just very briefly, I don't wish to come across as patronising in any way. We don't do streaming at Gillespie's. Streaming is a system where you would be in the top group, for example, in every single subject, regardless of your ability level in other subjects. In my day, when I was a boy, I was in the top group in maths and English and Gaelic and so on and so forth, but also was placed in the top group in art and in music, where my knowledge and my interest was a good deal less than some others who should have been in that group. In the case of maths, we offer essentially it's mixed ability that we have throughout S1 and S2. Having said that, we do identify around 10% of our cohort for whom maths they need additional help, and they will tend to be in smaller groups, and they will have additional support in the classrooms with them. In some cases, they may have 2 adults in the class. Maybe it's a group of 12 or 14, but in all the other groups, they are mixed ability, and the expectation is that around 90% of our pupils are aiming for National 5. I alluded earlier to changes that we'd made in maths. That was one of the changes I did make soon after I arrived. Formerly, it was the case that around 60% of our S1 and S2 were aiming towards what was then the equivalent of National 5. We changed that to 90%. I think it was justified, and the results since have borne fruit. Great believer in that if you raise expectations with appropriate support in place, that young people perform better. But we can expand on that point and talk a bit more about that when Aisling Dolan, my colleague, is presenting here on the 22nd of March, which is the next Parent Council meeting. And
do you want to say anything about English?
English, similarly, it's mixed ability in S1, S2. And once again, we have smaller groups where there are youngsters who need a bit of additional support for whatever reason. Sometimes they come from another country and their level of English is not quite the level of fluency that they would need. Sometimes it's youngsters who have other, and I'll call them just in generic terms, barriers to their learning, where we put specialist support in with them through our support for learning department. They will help. Sometimes that can be extraction, where they will have intensive support in our support for learning department. Sometimes it will be support for learning and having learning assistants in the classroom with them, supporting them. So broadly, it's the same in maths. It's a mixed ability approach for 90% of the youngsters, but smaller groups where appropriate with targeted support.
Well, I can confirm that was our final question, so we have managed to deal with them all this evening, which is excellent, so tidy.
Sorry, there was a question that came through email which did arrive before the closing of the questions, but the person who sent it couldn't put it in, so I've popped it into the chat, and I just wonder if we could just finish up with that question. Sorry.
Hilary, I can see it in the chat, but it is not in a format I can read. Would you be able to read it out?
Oh, yes, so it's just this, there have been several tests in S3, Nat 4 and Nat 5, and the relevance of results isn't clear. I don't know how to support and discuss with my young person. I'd really appreciate more information on what's happening and why.
So can I ask you from our understanding, just to repeat that question, I guess?
So there have been several tests during S3 for Nat 4 and Nat 5, and the relevance of the results isn't clear. I don't know how to support and discuss with my young person, and I'd really appreciate more information on what these tests, what's happening and why.
So in general terms then, throughout S3 and S4, there will be unit tests. They are taking place throughout the year. There'll be a combination of both summative insofar as those marks, those grades would, for example, in the event of final exams not being cancelled, allow us to determine a final grade for that pupil based on achievement. But also they're used to determine next steps. It's just a measure. We call that formative assessment. It's a measure basically of their understanding at that time, and it allows them then to focus on areas that they are less understanding of. I appreciate that across all youngsters' subjects, sharing that level of detail with parents isn't straightforward, and it's work in progress. I would welcome if there's a specific subject area that a parent would like more information on. We will do that. There is a deal of information on our website, which covers what's covered in each of the faculties in the different courses. But beyond that, if there are specifics that that particular parent would like me to address or speak to, please get in touch with me directly.
Thank you, Donald. So I think that is genuinely the final question for this evening. So I think all that remains for me to say now is to thank you, Donald, for your update and for answering the Q&A questions. To thank also everybody attending for your questions and for participating in the meeting. As I mentioned earlier, the questions we captured and posted on our website with answers after the meeting. We don't always do that when we manage to deal with all the questions, but I think it could be useful just to have a note for other people who might want to see what was asked about. Our next meeting, as I mentioned before, will be on Tuesday, 22nd of March, and we'll cover the subject of the maths curriculum at the school and how that works in practice. And as Donald has said, Faculty Head Aisling Dolan will deal with that, and I'm sure it will be of interest to everybody with a child doing maths, which I think is probably most people at the school. As always, please raise any issues or make any suggestions via the Parent Council email address, jghscouncilcoms@gmail.com, and please also take a look at our website for further information on our work. That's at jghsparentcouncil.org, and a link can be found in the Parents section of the school's own website as well. So thank you for coming. I look forward to joining you again next time, and good night.